Dmitri. Uh, Welcome back to my second course in Babuma Sara's lessons. Today we're going to mark the frets. It's good timing because my marks have worn off, so it's time to replenish the marks on my instrument anyway. Um, these are to help with the patterns and help your eyes not get lost in the strange fretboard pattern that the instrument has. Um, for the most part, it's a chromatic layout, very much identical to a standard guitar fret with some extra frets in there for the microtones. I think the standard layout is missing a couple of chromatic notes. I think there's one missing around here, and there's one chromatic fret missing around here with the standard layout. Um, but that's a small price to pay for having all these lovely microtones to work with. So I'm not going to be using fret numbering because that kind of gets silly. The fret numbers may be different between you and me because I've changed where some of my positions are. I've changed some of the microtones. Um, so I'll try to use just the standard guitar fretboard numbers because all the notes we're going to be talking about are on the standard guitar type fretboard. Um, so I may be using those numbers. I may also refer to the interval that fret has in comparison to the open string. So for example, if I talk about the octave fret, that's at the same position where the 12th fret of a guitar would be. Uh, so no matter what that string is tuned to, this fret here is going to be an octave of whatever note that is. So I may refer to that as the 12th fret or the octave fret. Similarly, we have the perfect 5th fret. Uh, it's where the 7th fret would be on a guitar. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That nice perfect 5th. No matter what string you play, that fret's going to be a perfect 5th. So I'll refer to that as intervals. Like the major third. 1, 2, 3, the sad scale. I'll refer to that as the minor third, or the major third, which is a half step up. The major third. 1, 2, 3. So let's get started. I like to use a little silver metallic kind of Sharpie uh, to mark with. It rubs off a lot though, so you may want to use a tiny dot sticker, or I don't know if nail polish might work better, or there may be other ideas to use, but a little non-permanent marking because I don't want to put something that I can't get off again, um, in case things change or. But I like to mark this surface of the neck rather than like put dots here where they have them on guitar fretboards. Those are embedded, and I don't want to mark this surface because it's just going to get worn away by fretting. So I like to mark in here where the frets are, and my eyeball can easily see that much easier than seeing this surface. So the first mark I like to put is on the minor third note, which is the 4th fret on this guy. It's where a 3rd fret would be on a typical guitar. So put one dot in between the 2 frets there. I also like to mark where my major third is. I like to mark where that guy is, and I put 2 smaller dots there. I put 2 smaller ones there so I know for my scales in my mind, I know, okay, there's my minor third, there's my major third. I also put a single dot where the perfect 4th is. That's where the 5th fret would be on a typical guitar. So I mark that fret. I usually don't have to mark the perfect fifth fret because there's this nice space here that kind of gives the eye a resting pattern. If you look, there's a bunch of frets all in a line here, and this is a nice zone to see. There's my perfect fifth. You can mark that one with 2 dots maybe to break up the pattern of 1 dot, 2 dots, or I leave it unmarked because it's a very easy place for the eye to find. You may want to mark this is where a minor seventh would be on the fretboard. I think the 10th fret of a guitar, but a minor third from this note. You may want to mark it. I don't find that useful anymore. My eyeball can find that note easily enough and differentiate between, because these two notes, you're usually going to have one of these in your scale and not the other one. So it's like the major minor third. If you're in a major key, you got a major third. Up here with the 6th and 7th, if you're in a certain kind of scale, your 6th and 7th is going to be a specific note. One of these two. You're rarely going to have both of those notes in the same key. So maybe a dot there. And then 2 dots on the octave fret. Two dots on that octave fret to give your eyeball, there's the octave. And then another dot on the minor third above that, copying this one down here. Boom. And I also have marked on the body of the instrument where this very high note would be. The one I mentioned in the other video where some instruments have a little fret embedded along the body here. To be able to get that note. So that's a little mark I put up here on the body. I don't know if you'll be able to do that on your instrument. That'll be interesting to find out. All of these scales are going to be shown in the octave tuning, where the low note and the middle note are all tuned to A. That's the way I'll be showing these scales, because that's the most common tuning that I usually use. And the only difference is all the notes on the middle course will just have to be changed by one whole step. If you drop the middle course to G, then to play that same pitch, you'll have to move everything up 2 or 3 frets, depending on where it is and how many microtones are between. But point being, you have to move everything up a whole step on that string, so it changes the scale patterns. But for now, I'll be teaching the scale patterns based on the nice open AA D tuning. In this case, G sharp and C sharp tuning, because we're tuning to that funny G sharp, C sharp for the song. So in case you're wondering if you're not in tune, go ahead and tune to G sharp. And then you should be in tune with what I'm playing along. So, the natural minor scale, starting with the lowest string. I'm kind of skipping the middle string in this playing. You can also start it on the middle string. It depends on what voice you want those last notes in. The deeper one or the higher one. You can also start the scale on the lowest note, on the lowest string. And then going up from there on the higher string, I'll go another octave. Again, trying to hit that high note up there. It's kind of a challenge because there's no real fret there, but alas. So that's A natural minor. In this case, G sharp natural minor because we're tuned to G sharp now. Sorry. But that's how easy it is to change the flavor or the scale of the instrument. Is just tuning to a slightly different pitch. And then the same pattern, you'll be playing the same song, but it'll be higher or lower. Uh, they did that all the time in period. That's why I don't understand why so many period musicians are so obsessed with it being played in the correct key signature or whatever, because a lot of music was written down. It was meant to be played in whatever key signature the instruments and vocalists felt comfortable playing in. So if you had a nice soprano that could hit those high notes, then play it in B or C. If you've only got an alto that can't hit those high notes, drop it down, play it in A, play it in G, uh, play it in a lower key signature. So transposition was done all the time back then. So the next scale will be Phrygian, a very similar scale to the minor. It's just the second step of the scale is a half step lower. So it starts off with the lowest note here. I will start with the middle chorus because that'll be more attuned to your instrument. I'll start with the middle chorus here. First fret is the second step of the scale. And then everything else is the same as natural minor. And then continuing up another octave. Whoops. One more time. That one sounds very mysterious and interesting. It's got that lovely half step in the first part of the scale. There's that microtone to decorate it with. Another microtone to decorate with. It's a lovely key to improvise and do just drifty, dreamy things with. Also, a lot of songs start with the finger here. So that's another position in addition to this being kind of a standard position to start with. This is a second one when you want to start up higher. Okay, that's minor, and then Phrygian. The next is Heroise. Heroise is very similar to Phrygian. We're just going to raise the third step of the scale up a half step. So starting on the middle string, open. First fret again. and then your major third fret. On this, it's the sixth fret, but I don't know if that's going to be fifth or sixth fret for you. But wherever the major scale or the major third would be on a guitar, that would be the fourth fret. 2, 3, and then open high string is next. 3, 4. So it's very similar to Phrygian, but the third step is raised. Whoops. One more time, going higher. That's another key I like to start usually up in here. So there we have three very common scales used in a lot of Persian, Turkish, and Armenian music. The natural minor, the Phrygian, and Hirwaz. The piece I'll be showing you now, Yes Kezirbeck, is in fact in the natural minor of the G sharp that we tune to on the low note. Usually that would be A, but G sharp is what we tune to accommodate my silly flute fiddle instrument. Um, a lot of instruments were tuned in G sharp to A. In modern times, a lot of saz music is recorded in A sharp, where they'll tune their strings even a little bit higher. I've heard stuff even in B, but I think they have to go to thinner strings and use shorter instruments for that. So tuning of the low note can be all over the place in various music, and oftentimes I have to, if I want to learn a song, I just have to tune my strings to what I hear, because it's sometimes hard to tell exactly what they're tuned to. They may be tuned to some weird microtone, to accommodate one of their singers or one of their other instruments, or such as that. So it's a very flexible instrument for tuning. The important thing to learn on the fingering is just the patterns, and once you learn the patterns, you can change your tuning to accommodate for anything, rather than trying to shift your fingering to accommodate a different key. Go ahead and just change your tuning. Um, it's a very flexible instrument regarding that. So the scale for Yes Kezirbeck is the natural minor. And so first I'm going to play along a little bit. Um, some of the ornamentation I may not be playing exactly the same as I recorded it. That's kind of the point of the song. That's why the title is I Will Never Love You the Same Way Twice. Because it's one of those songs that's not really meant to be played exactly the same again and again. And I add or subtract different ornaments um, in between the phrases. But I will teach you, I'll start with a simpler version of it and then slowly crank up the ornaments. Um, and then explain how you can kind of interchange things and mix things up again. So now we're going to play along with the first couple of phrases, and then I will pause and slow it down. So, the first little intro part is basically it starts on the high open, the high string open, and that's just dun, 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 dun. Whoops. So that is the first basic part of the melody. Um, I believe I started the intro up here. And then going into that, there's any number of ways you can begin the song, starting with a strumming intro or um, that's a common motif of kind of to get everybody warmed up into the song or to cue the drummers or something like that. So one more time. You can also play the descending part on the middle string. So once more, starting with the first part of the phrase. And that is not as complicated as it sounds. Just to do it without the ornament, it would be like that, but practice a lot of this. And now the second part of the phrase. So starting that one from where it loops around. It takes the motif of and flips it around, kind of flips it around. So instead of down, up, down, it's up, down, up. So starting from the beginning of that loop. And that's the same. Dun, 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 dun. You can do little triplets there at the ending phrase. But one more time, I'll do that a little slower for that second section. And then first section. Second section. Those are the two primary sections of the piece. They kind of go back and forth. Uh, they can be orchestrated in different ways and such, so that's a fun one to jam on. The solo I improvised, and I would have to practice a little bit to play it exactly the same way twice. Again, that's kind of part of the reason of the song is it's never meant to be really played exactly the same way twice. There are a couple of improvised bits in there as well in the recording. So to teach you note for note, uh, I'd have to play along extensively with you with the recording or something to get all those ornaments in exactly the way I play it there. But that's not really important to the piece. It's kind of meant to start off simply and then build in ornamentation, build and build and build, and get fancier and fancier as the piece goes on. Um, so just learning the basic root of it is a great start, and then you can come up with your own ornamentations or your own little fills. But a lot of those fills are not really so complicated as they sound. And there's sometimes I do kind of Eddie Van Halen stuff where I will do a lot of open notes. That's one I think I use at the end of a phrase. Let me show you how that one fits in. So that's just. But I'm not picking every note, I'm just letting my finger pull off. And then you can do a similar thing starting on this fret. I do that one also. Instead of starting up here, start here. So that's the basic outline of the first and second sections of the piece. Uh, and then when I go up into the solo, that is mostly improvised there. I rarely play it exactly the same way twice. That's the point of the piece, and that's why it's called I'll Never Love You the Same Way Twice. But then in the sections after it, I do some variations on the A and B parts, and I'll break that down a little bit. This is using a little bit of a common motif in a lot of Armenian and Turkish and Persian music, is extending one of the motifs of something that you've used already, making the familiar a little bit unfamiliar all of a sudden, extending a phrase, shortening a phrase, things like that. So I will show you what I did, some of the things I did there at the second section, uh, or after the solo rather. Uh, when the high voice comes in, I just use a double octave and I just played the same melody up high, uh, so it gives a different flavor, a different feeling to it. So I will play some of the ornamentations there to show you some of the things, some of the kind of tricks of the trade, as it were. Um, Starting with part A and then part B, doing it the fancy way, which is kind of brings things to a conclusion, kind of brings things to more of a climax. So I'll play a little bit slower to start off with. So that kind of prolongs what would be a shorter phrase normally. So I'll do that one more time, slowing down. I will play it a bit slower, and I will play just the B section, kind of the fancy part of the B section. So. So now we've got an outline of that song. Here are some tips and things to practice to make some of those ornaments easier. Um, a lot of it is just practicing that little hammer on, hammer off. It takes a very light touch on this instrument, so your big, meaty bass playing hands should have an easy time doing a lot of that. One thing to practice on is to alternate, like for example, start on this note of the scale, and then also practice getting up there, the next note of the scale. Practice just that one by itself, kind of a stretch. And then move it up a fret. That's really a stretch. But practice trying to get up to another note. It gets easier as you get higher. The frets get closer together. That's also another motif to practice. Starting at the octave fret in here, and then in the key signature the way in here. But without picking every single note, so it's just I'm only picking on the da 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 da. The rest is just the finger work. So practice things like that, especially that's just a little variation of that. And then, like the second part takes that motif and flips it upside down. So also practice going down and then back up. So starting here. And then one final word about the pick and the pick holding position. The most common coloration for the picks, the white ones are thickest, the brown ones are a little bit thinner, and then the orange ones are a little bit thinner yet, and then the red ones are the thinnest of all. In general, I use the orange, sometimes brown or white, but I find they can be a little bit stiff and they don't roll quite so smoothly when things like that. Sometimes I'll try the white one, for example. It doesn't pick up the highest strings quite so well as the thinner orange one. But this can vary by how you like to feel and such. The grip, the pick should be coming out essentially straight from under your first finger, and choking up on it with only a tiny bit is going to give a sharper sound, and then a looser grip is better for if you're strumming. Because then you won't risk dragging your finger across the strings. If you go with a very, very tight grip with only a tiny bit of the pick out there, you can get a wonderful sharp sound in your rolls, but then you risk dragging your fingers across the string. And then strumming sounds a bit loud and aggressive as opposed to with a looser grip on the pick. It's a much smoother strum. And I can really put energy into it without overdoing it. So again, it's a matter of what you like and how you're playing and such that day. But those are some tips that should help you moving forward. And now to sing us out, I'm going to play along with the piece we're learning, and I'll see you next time, and take care.